I've never been drawn to loud love. I'm drawn to the kind of presence that feels like peace, the kind that doesn't demand attention, but somehow holds it. There's a hidden reason I'm drawn to a woman like you. It's not just beauty. It's not just kindness. It's the way you carry strength without showing off. The way you stay gentle in a world that keeps trying to harden you. You remind me that real connection isn't about possession. It's about respect. It's about choosing someone every day without needing to own them. And maybe that's the quiet truth we forget. The deepest attraction isn't loud desire. It's recognition. Tonight, I want to talk about that hidden reason. The reason some souls feel familiar. And why the right kind of love feels less like fire and more like coming home. I've spent a lot of time watching the world rush past itself. People chasing noise, chasing approval, chasing something they think will finally make them feel whole. Somewhere along the way, I realized my heart doesn't move like that. It never has. I'm not drawn to what's loud or obvious. I'm drawn to what's steady, to what remains calm even when the ground feels unstable. That's the hidden reason I'm drawn to a woman like you. There's a strength in you that doesn't announce itself. You don't walk into a room trying to own it. You don't need to prove anything, and somehow that makes you powerful in a way that can't be shaken. I notice how you listen more than you speak, how you observe before you decide, how you choose your words with care. In a world addicted to reaction, you respond with intention. That kind of strength doesn't come from winning battles. It comes from surviving them quietly. I'm drawn to the way you carry your past without letting it harden you. You've been through things that could have made you colder, sharper, more guarded. Instead, you stayed open, not naive, just brave enough to keep your heart human. That tells me more about you than any saint or you could ever tell. It tells me you understand pain, but you refuse to let it define the way you love or the way you see others. There's a depth in you that doesn't rush to be understood. You don't demand to be seen, yet you are impossible to overlook. You sit with your thoughts. You allow silence to exist without trying to fill it. And in that silence, there's honesty. I find myself drawn to honesty because it feels rare. It feels like truth without performance. Like a place where I don't have to pretend to be more than I am. I've learned that real connection isn't built on excitement alone. Excitement fades. What stays is how someone makes you feel when nothing extraordinary is happening. And with you, even the ordinary feels grounded, safe, real. You don't drain energy, you stay diet. You don't create chaos to feel alive. You bring calm that lets others breathe. That's not something you learn from books or advice. That's something life carves into you. I notice the way you respect boundaries, yours and others. You understand that love isn't about control or possession, it's about choice, about waking up every day and deciding to show up with care. That tells me you don't love out of fear. You love out of understanding, and that kind of love doesn't cling. It stands beside. There's also a quiet courage in the way you stay true to yourself, even when it would be easier to blend in. You don't bend just to be accepted. You don't lose yourself to belong. That kind of self-respect changes the way you move through the world. It changes the way you love. It turns love into a shared space, not a cage. I'm drawn to you because you don't ask me to be someone else. You don't need me to perform strength or confidence. You allow space for vulnerability without turning it into weakness. Around you, honesty feels natural, and that's rare. Most people say they want honesty, but they only accept it when it's convenient. You accept it even when it's uncomfortable. You understand that healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with dramatic moments or perfect closure. Sometimes it comes from simply being there, from listening, from not trying to fix everything. You have that presence, and presence can change someone more deeply than words ever could. The hidden reason I'm drawn to a woman like you is that you remind me of what matters when everything unnecessary falls away. You remind me that strength can be gentle, that love can be calm, that connection doesn't have to hurt to be real. And in a world that keeps telling us to be harder, faster, louder, you remain soft in the ways that actually require courage. I've learned that love changes the moment it turns into ownership. The moment someone feels entitled to another person, something quiet and sacred disappears. What draws me to a woman like you is that you understand this without needing it explained. You don't confuse love with control. You don't mistake attention for devotion. You know that real connection begins where possession ends. You don't try to cage what you care about. You don't tighten your grip out of fear of loss. Instead, you trust. And trust is not weakness. Trust is a decision to respect another person's freedom, even when it scares you, especially when it scares you. That tells me you love with maturity, not desperation. You love with awareness, not anxiety. I notice how you allow people to be themselves around you. You don't reshape them to fit your expectations. You don't love the idea of someone more than the reality of who they are. You see flaws without turning them into pawns. You see independence without treating it like a threat. That kind of respect creates space. And in that space, something honest can grow. There's something powerful about a woman who doesn't need to own someone to feel secure. You don't measure love by constant presence or endless reassurance. You understand that two people can stand side by side without standing on each other. That love doesn't mean merging identities until nothing separate remains. It means choosing to walk together while still knowing who you are on your own. I'm drawn to the way you don't demand to be someone's whole world. You don't ask another person to abandon their purpose, their passions, their solitude, just to prove loyalty. You recognize that love should add to a life, not replace it. That respect shows emotional intelligence. It shows you've thought deeply about what connection really means. You don't chase, you don't trap, you don't manipulate emotions to feel needed. You understand that if someone wants to stay, they will. And if they don't, forcing them only creates resentment. That understanding doesn't come from indifference. It comes from self-worth, from knowing that love offered freely is the only love worth having. I see it in the way you communicate. You speak honestly without trying to dominate the conversation. You listen without planning your response. You don't interrupt someone's truth just to insert your own. That kind of respect creates safety. And safety is rare. People open up when they don't feel controlled. They soften when they don't feel judged. What draws me in is how you value choice. You don't want to be chosen because someone is afraid to be alone. You want to be chosen because someone sees you and still decides to stay. You know that obligation is not devotion. You know that loyalty born from fear will never feel the same as loyalty born from respect. You allow distance without turning it into punishment. You understand that time apart doesn't weaken bonds. Sometimes it strengthens them. You don't keep score. You don't test love by withholding it. You don't play games with affection. That honesty feels grounding. It feels adult. It feels real. I'm drawn to you because you don't confuse intensity with intimacy. You don't need constant access to someone's life to feel close. You understand that closeness is built on understanding, not surveil. You respect privacy. You respect silence. You respect the parts of a person that belong only to themselves. You don't try to own someone's past or dictate their future. You accept that everyone arrives with a history you didn't create. You don't punish someone for who they were before you met them. You don't demand guarantees about what tomorrow will look like. You stay present. And presence is the most respectful form of love there is. There's a calm confidence in the way you love. You don't cling. You don't hover. You don't shrink yourself to keep someone comfortable, and you don't ask them to shrink for you. You meet people at eye level, equal. That balance is rare, and it's deeply attractive. I think that's the hidden reason I'm drawn to a woman like you. You don't want to be owned, and you don't want to own anyone. You want connection without captivity, love without chains, choice without pressure. And in a world where so many people confuse control with care, your respect feels like honesty, your freedom feels like trust, and your love feels like something that can breathe, something that can last, something that doesn't need to prove itself by holding too tightly, something that stays because it wants to, because it chooses to, because it understands that the deepest bonds are built not by possession but by respect, by allowing two people to remain whole while walking forward together, knowing they could leave but deciding not to, again and again, in quiet moments, in unspoken understanding, in the kind of love that doesn't demand owners. Hip to feel real, that doesn't need rules to feel secure, that doesn't fear freedom because it was never built on control, but on choice, trust, and the strength to let someone be exactly who they are, without conditions, without claims, without cages, just presence, just respect, just two people standing side by side, free, aware, and still choosing each other even when no one is watching, even when nothing is promised. even when the only reason to stay is the truth of how it feels to be there together, without ownership, without fear, without needing to hold tighter to feel close, knowing that what is given freely is the only thing that can ever truly remain, and that love, when it is rooted in respect, doesn't end, it simply continues, quietly, steadily, honestly, in the space where freedom and connection meet, where neither person disappears, where neither person is claimed, where love exists not as something taken, but as something shared, willingly, openly, without possession, without demand, without an ending, just a continuation of choice, of respect, of understanding, moving forward, unfinished, still open, still breathing. There's a kind of healing that doesn't come from advice or solutions. It doesn't arrive with speeches or instructions. It happens quietly, almost without permission, when someone simply stays, when someone doesn't rush your pain, doesn't minimize it, doesn't try to turn it into something neat and manageable. That's the kind of healing you carry. And it's the reason being near you feels different. You don't ask what's wrong just to respond. You ask because you're willing to listen. And when the words come out tangled, incomplete, or heavy, you don't correct them. You don't rush to make sense of them. You let them exist. That patience creates space, and in that space, something inside begins to loosen. People don't realize how rare that is. How many wounds come from not being heard rather than from what actually happened. I notice how you sit with discomfort instead of running from it. You don't turn away when someone's emotions become inconvenient. You don't disappear when things get complicated. You understand that healing isn't linear, that progress doesn't always look like improvement. Sometimes it looks like standing still, breathing through memories that refuse to stay quiet. You don't judge that process, you respect it. There's a calm in the way you show up, not as someone trying to save, but as someone willing to witness. You don't take responsibility for fixing another person's broken pieces, yet you don't abandon them either. That balance matters. It tells me you understand that healing belongs to the person experiencing it, but no one should have to face it alone. You don't offer false positivity. You don't say everything will be fine just to end the conversation. You allow sadness to exist without trying to cover it with hope that hasn't been earned yet. That honesty is grounding. It tells the truth without cruelty. It says, I see where you are, not where you should be. Being with you doesn't feel like pressure to be healed already. It feels like permissio. And to be in progress. You don't measure someone by how well they hide their scars. You understand that some wounds don't fully close, they simply become quieter over time. And you don't treat that as failure. You treat it as part of being human. There's something deeply comforting about your presence. Not because you distract from pain, but because you don't make it worse. You don't add expectation. You don't demand strength on days when strength feels impossible. You don't mistake vulnerability for weakness. You recognize it as courage in its rawest form. I'm drawn to the way you listen with your whole body, the way your attention doesn't drift, the way silence around you doesn't feel awkward or empty. It feels held, like something meaningful is allowed to exist without being explained. That kind of silence can calm even the loudest thoughts. You don't heal people by changing them. You heal them by letting them be exactly who they are in that moment. Angry, tired, confused, quiet. You don't take their emotions personally. You don't make their pain about you. That emotional maturity creates trust, and trust is where healing actually begins. I see how people soften around you without realizing it, how their shoulders drop, how their voices change, how they start speaking more slowly, more honestly. That doesn't happen because you try to make it happen. It happens because you feel safe. And safety is rare in a world that constantly demands performance. You understand that sometimes healing looks like doing nothing together, sitting, breathing, sharing space without conversati. You don't fill every moment with words. You let presence speak for itself. And presence, when it's genuine, can be more powerful than any reassurance. There's a steadiness in you that doesn't waver when emotions get heavy. You don't panic when someone breaks down. You don't shut down when tears appear. You stay. And staying, especially when it's uncomfortable, is one of the most healing acts. You don't rush closure. You don't force forgiveness. You don't tell people they need to let go before they're ready. You respect timing, you respect process, you respect the fact that healing isn't about erasing the past, but learning how to carry it without being crushed by its weight. What draws me closer is that you don't need to understand everything to be supportive. You don't demand explanations that someone can't yet articulate. You accept fragments, pauses, half-formed thoughts. You allow healing to unfold at its own pace without a deadline. You don't treat emotional pain as something inconvenient or embarrassing. You don't dismiss it as weakness. You understand that everyone is carrying something unseen. That awareness changes how you move through the world. It makes your kindness quieter, deeper, more intentional. I'm drawn to you because your presence feels like rest. Not escape, not numbness, but rest. The kind that allows the nervous system to finally slow down. The kind that makes breathing easier without effort. The kind that reminds people they don't have to be on guard all the time. You don't heal by teaching lessons. You heal by example, by showing what patience looks like, what respect feels like, what emotional safety sounds like in everyday moments. And people learn without realizing they're learning. They begin to treat themselves more gently simply by being around you. There's no urgency in the way you care. You don't rush intimacy. You don't push for emotional access. You let trust build naturally, layer by layer. That gradual closeness feels solid. It doesn't collapse under pressure. It holds. I think the hidden reason I'm drawn to a woman like you is that you don't just see people as they could be. You see them as they are, wounded and unfinished, and you don't look away. Your presence doesn't promise healing, it makes healing possible because it removes fear, because it creates calm, because it allows truth to surface without consequence, because it reminds people that they don't have to earn care by being perfect, that they don't have to rush their recovery to be worthy of connection, that they can exist in their pain and still be accepted, still be respected, still be valued. And that kind of presence stays with a person long after the moment has passed, lingering quietly, reshaping the way they see themselves, the way they speak to themselves, the way they allow others to get close, becoming part of their inner world, not as noise, not as advice, but as a steady reminder that healing doesn't always arrive through change. Sometimes it arrives through being seen, through being allowed, through being met exactly where you are, without pressure, without expectation, without an ending, just continued presence, patience, continued quiet understanding, still there, still listening, still holding space, still allowing the process to remain open, unfinished. Human, sometimes you meet someone, and there's no dramatic moment, no spark that explodes, no rush that takes your breath away. Instead, there's a quiet sense of familiarity, like you've stepped into a room you didn't know you were searching for. That feeling doesn't come from desire alone, it comes from recognition. And that's the hidden reason I'm drawn to a woman like you. I don't feel like I'm discovering you. I feel like I'm remembering something, as if some part of me already knows the rhythm of your presence, the weight of your silence, the honesty in the way you move through the world. It's not about chemistry that burns fast. It's about something deeper, slower, steadier, a recognition that doesn't need explanation. You don't feel like a challenge to win or a mystery to solve. You feel like truth, and truth doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It just exists, quietly, waiting for someone patient enough to notice it. I notice it in the way you don't rush connection, you don't force closeness, you allow it to unfold naturally, without pressure, without urgency, trusting that what's real doesn't need to be chased. Being drawn to you doesn't feel like pursuit, it feels like alignment, like two paths that were always moving in the same direction, finally running side by side. There's no need to convince, no need to impress, just a shared understanding that doesn't rely on constant words. That kind of recognition settles into the before it ever reaches the mind. I've realized that attraction based on recognition feels calm. It doesn't make you anxious. It doesn't make you doubt yourself. It doesn't make you afraid of losing something before you even have it. Instead, it grounds you. It makes you more yourself, not less. Around you, I don't feel the need to perform strength or hide uncertainty. I feel allowed to exist. As I am, you mirror something back to me that I value deeply, authenticity, not perfection, not confidence without cracks, but honesty that includes flaws without apology. When I look at you, I don't see someone trying to be ideal, I see someone real, And something in me recognizes that reality because I've spent my life trying to protect it in myself. Recognition feels different from desire because it doesn't demand, it invites. It says, I see you, not I want to take you. It creates a connection that feels mutual, not one-sided. I'm not drawn to you because you complete me. I'm drawn to you because you stand whole, and in that wholeness, something in me feels understood. You don't trigger old wounds. You don't activate fear. You don't pull me into patterns of proving or pleasing. Instead, you interrupt them. You remind me that connection doesn't have to be complicated to be meaningful. That love doesn't need drama to feel intense. That sometimes the deepest bonds feel quiet because they're built on recognition rather than longing. There's a familiarity in the way you exist in your own skin. You're not searching for approval in every interaction. You're not constantly asking the world to validate you. That self-possession creates a resonance. It speaks to a part of me that values simplicity, sincerity, and emotional honesty over spectacle. I'm drawn to you because you don't feel like someone I need to impress to be worthy of staying. You feel like someone who sees worth without needing proof. That recognition removes fear. And when fear leaves, something truer can take its place. You don't feel new in a superficial way, you feel timeless. As if this connection isn't about timing or circumstance, but about readiness. About two people finally being able to meet each other without armor, without illusion, without trying to be more than they are. Recognition creates patience. It doesn't rush outcomes. It doesn't demand definitions before understanding has time to grow. T allows connection to breathe, to develop layers instead of burning out quickly. With you, I don't feel pressure to label what this is. I feel trust that whatever it becomes will reveal itself honestly. I think that's why being drawn to a woman like you feels different from anything loud or intense I've known before. It doesn't pull me out of myself. It pulls me deeper into myself. It aligns rather than consumes. It doesn't ask me to escape my life. It fits into it naturally. There's a quiet confidence in recognition. It doesn't beg for certainty. It doesn't fear ambiguity. It understands that some things are real even before they are defined. You embody that understanding. And something in me recognizes it instantly, without logic, without analysis. I'm not drawn to you, Beck, as you promise excitement. I'm drawn to you because you promise truth. And truth has a gravity that desire alone can't compete with. It stays, it settles, it deepens with time instead of fading. You don't feel like someone I'm chasing, you feel like someone I'm meeting. And meeting implies equality, mutual presence, mutual awareness. There's no imbalance there, no hunger to fill a void, just recognition of something familiar, something grounded, something honest. I've learned that recognition doesn't come often. You can live a lifetime without experiencing it. You can mistake attraction, attachment, and intensity for connection and still feel unseen. Recognition is different. It's when you see someone and feel less alone in the world, not because they remove loneliness, but because they understand it. That's the hidden reason I'm drawn to a woman like you. You don't feel like a destination. You feel like a shared direction, like a quiet agreement between two people who recognize something true in each other without needing to explain it, without needing to rush it, without needing to control it, just allowing it to exist, to grow, to remain open, unfinished, real, still unfolding, still recognizing, still choosing presence over pursuit, truth over illusion, recognition over chase, continuing forward not because it has to, but because it feels right to keep walking side by side, aware, grounded, and still discovering the depth of what was already known the moment recognition first appeared.